Does that jog your memory at all? Andy, what we're talking about? Okay. We want to speak with you about a homicide that occurred over on Bayview on December 14th, specifically. Okay. Understand that
grief does strange things to people. Sometimes it softens you, sometimes it breaks you, and sometimes it points you in a direction you can never come back from. When Muladi lost her mother in 2021, the pain didn't fade with time. It lingered, it twisted, and eventually, it turned into suspicion, a feeling she couldn't shake, a question she couldn't silence. What if her mother's death wasn't natural? Searching for answers, Muladi went somewhere deeply personal, deeply cultural. It detonated her world. She was told her mother had been murdered, not by a stranger, not by fate, but by her own father. What followed wasn't just belief, it was action. Secret meetings, failed attempts, dark rituals, and finally, a decision that crossed the point of no return. A respected education official, a family torn apart from the inside, and a daughter who helped open the gate for her father's killers. This isn't just a story about murder. It's about grief, belief, manipulation, and how far a lie can travel when it's wrapped in certainty. Muladi had never questioned her mother's death, at least not at first. In 2021, when her mother passed away after a short illness, the family was told it was a heart-related condition. Painful, sudden, but natural. Muladi leaned on her father. She grieved like anyone else would. Quietly, heavily, with time. But grief doesn't always stay still. As months passed, something began to shift. According to family accounts, the seed of doubt didn't come from Muladi herself. It came from outside, specifically from her maternal aunt, who suggested she seek clarity. Not medical clarity, spiritual clarity. That suggestion changed everything. Muladi went to consult a sangoma. Not just any sangoma, her ex-boyfriend. Someone who knew her, someone she trusted, someone who understood her vulnerability. She went looking for closure. What she was given instead was a narrative. The sangoma told her her instincts were right. Her mother did not die a natural death. She had been killed. Not by illness, not by fate, by muti. And the person responsible, he said, was her own father. For Muladi, this wasn't just shocking, it was destabilizing. Accusations of betrayal cut deeper when they come wrapped in certainty and spiritual authority. This wasn't presented as a possibility, it was delivered as truth. And then came the most dangerous part. The sangoma didn't stop at naming the killer. He offered a solution. He told Muladi to do the same to her father. At first, it didn't escalate to violence, not immediately. They began with muti, concoctions prepared in secret, given to Muladi to administer. On multiple occasions, nothing happened. Dr. Mehlape remained alive, healthy, unaffected. Each failure didn't weaken the belief, it strengthened it. Instead of questioning the story, they questioned the method. Maybe the mixture was wrong. Maybe it wasn't strong enough. Maybe it needed help. That's when the circle widened. Muladi involved her aunt, Madi Mao, her mother's sister, a respected school principal, an educated woman, someone no one would ever suspect of being involved in something like this. Together, with the sangoma, they changed the plan. If muti wouldn't work, then force would. The state would later argue that this was the moment the conspiracy fully formed. They decided Dr. Mehlape had to be killed. Not spiritually, physically. Money entered the equation. A hitman was sourced. A payment of 200,000 rand was agreed upon. The plan was no longer abstract. Final. On December 28, 2023, everything moved into place. Dr. Mehlape was at home in Mangu, sleeping. Safe, or so he believed. His son was also in the house. Muladi was there too. She opened the gate. She opened the door. The gunmen entered the house and staged a robbery. They searched rooms, asked for money, created noise, chaos, fear. Dr. Mehlape woke up and complied. He gave them what they wanted. It wasn't enough. Before leaving, they shot him. He died in his own home, in front of his children. The killers fled in a Ford Ranger double cab. Within hours, the news spread across Limpopo. Shock rippled through the Department of Education. Colleagues described Dr. Mehlape as a brilliant mind, a dedicated leader, someone who had overseen dozens of schools and helped build one of the best performing circuits in the province. He wasn't just an official, he was a mentor, a father, a pillar. At his memorial service, his children were consoled publicly. Muladi stood alongside her brother, grieving. for the second time in 2 years. First her mother, now her father. No one suspected her, not at first. The family rallied around the children, especially Muladi. They remembered how close she and her father had been, how proud he was of her. There was even a photograph, taken on her graduation day at the University of Limpopo, showing him beaming beside her, a father glowing with pride for his firstborn daughter. That image would later feel unbearable. Police investigations moved quickly. The murder was too clean, too organized. So was the alleged hitman, then her aunt, then another accomplice. The story the police uncovered wasn't random violence. It was a planned execution. At first, everyone denied everything. But denials don't last forever when evidence stacks up. In June 2025, Muladi became the first to break. Standing in the Polokwane High Court, she pleaded guilty to the murder of her father. She admitted to her role, to opening the gate, to participating in the plan. The court sentenced her to life imprisonment for murder, plus 15 years for robbery with aggravating circumstances. The daughter her father adored would never walk free again. Her confession cracked the case wide open. One by one, the others followed. In February 2026, the sangoma also pleaded guilty. He admitted to telling Muladi that her mother was murdered through muti, admitted to participating in the planning, admitted to his role in the events that led to Dr. Mehlape's death. He was sentenced to decades in prison. But the case wasn't finished. Muladi's aunt and other alleged accomplices remain on trial, facing charges of conspiracy to commit murder, robbery with aggravating circumstances, and possession of an unlicensed firearm. Their proceedings stretch into the future, keeping the family's wounds permanently open. In interviews, relatives said they were blindsided. They never saw this coming. They knew Dr. Mehlape loved his daughter deeply. They described Muladi as a good child, a mother herself, someone who had once leaned on family for support after losing her own mother. Now that same family is divided, by blood, by betrayal, by belief. Because this case isn't just about murder, it's about what happens when grief meets influence, when spiritual authority replaces evidence, when suspicion becomes certainty, and certainty becomes permission. And in the end, it leaves behind a question that has no comforting answer. How does a daughter go from mourning a parent to orchestrating another parent's death? What shattered this family wasn't just violence, it was belief. Belief wrapped in grief, belief spoken with confidence, belief that went unchallenged for far too long. By the time Muladi stood in court and admitted to her role, the story had already revealed its darkest truth. This murder did not begin with hatred. It began with persuasion. When the court reviewed Muladi's confession, one detail stood out above everything else. She didn't describe rage toward her father. She didn't speak of long-standing resentment or abuse. What she described was conviction, an unshakable belief that her father had murdered her mother. And that belief didn't originate from evidence. It came from a voice she trusted. The sangoma's role wasn't peripheral, it was central. He wasn't merely consulted, he guided. He affirmed her doubts, reinforced them, then escalated them. What began as spiritual clarity evolved into instruction, first with muti, then with murder. The court heard how repeated failures of the poison didn't trigger doubt. Instead, they triggered determination. Each failure pushed the conspirators closer to physical violence. The narrative had already been accepted as truth, so the outcome had to match it. That's the danger of absolute belief. Once it settles in, facts become irrelevant. Dr. Malekutu Mehlape never stood a chance to defend himself. There was no confrontation, no accusation, no question asked. He was convicted in silence, sentenced in secret, and executed in his own home. And perhaps the cruelest detail of all, his daughter was there. Not hiding, not absent, present. She opened the gate, she opened the door, she watched the plan unfold. When the gunman searched the house and demanded money, Dr. Mehlape complied. Everything about his behavior pointed to trust. Trust that his family was safe. Trust that he would survive the night. He was wrong. The bullet ended not only his life, but an entire legacy. Colleagues described him as a man who dedicated his life to education. 15 years overseeing one of the top-performing circuits in the Capricorn South district. 12 secondary schools, 18 primary schools, thousands of learners whose futures he helped shape. Officials spoke about his intellect, his discipline, his passion. They spoke about the loss to the province, but privately, the loss was immeasurable. 2 parents gone in 2 years, a son traumatized, a daughter imprisoned, a family fractured beyond repair. And still, the case wasn't over. As court proceedings continued, more uncomfortable truths surfaced. This wasn't an impulsive act. It wasn't a crime of passion. It was a conspiracy involving multiple adults, educated, respected members of the community, who all agreed at some level that killing a man was justified. The state argued that this collective belief system created an echo chamber. No one questioned the original claim. No one demanded proof. No one stopped to ask why a respected doctor and education official would suddenly murder his wife using muti, without motive, without history, without evidence. Instead, they planned. Money was exchanged, weapons were sourced, roles were assigned, and when the plan succeeded, the aftermath was staged to look like a robbery, an attempt to disguise intention behind chaos. But intention leaves traces.